Hello, everybody. Welcome to 321 No Kiddin. Bobby the Awesome here. Happy to be back. Doing some solo shows, catching up with you, catching up on life, how life happens, how recovery happens in life, all those good things. So, today I want to talk about I'm going through an experience right now, and I always love documenting like what's happening in the moment. And then, I always have a point of reference for reflection. And this one's been an interesting one. So, where do I begin? The beginning, I guess, because this has to do with family relationships and how to handle the relationships we're in. And I did not handle something right. Uh, at least, I guess sometimes there's not a right or wrong, but I did not handle something to the best of my ability, I don't think. So, my 18-year-old niece and I have continued to get closer and closer the last few years. She's freaking amazing. She's like the foundational reason I want to be a better human being. And I want to make the world a better place for her. Like that's like bottom line goal. And we're working on a project, we're working on a book together. And that's where it's kind of ironic. So the premise of the book started, we were in Connecticut last year, and she's short, but she has a cute little figure on her. She's got meat on her bones, and she has a chest. And the book premise came from she wears outfits that are definitely out of my comfort zone and definitely out of my mother's comfort zone. So we're at my mom's house, and she comes downstairs, and we're going to see a friend of mine up in New Hampshire. And I don't know politics, but it's pretty clear that New Hampshire, I'll make a blanket statement, didn't seem to be too crazy about LGBTQT. I don't want to mess up the initials. Doesn't seem to be into that, wants to have guns, has some very black and white beliefs and stuff. And maybe my niece didn't fall into the bucket of perfect New Hampshire, but that's besides the point. I didn't learn that until after. But she comes downstairs, and she's, wearing a shirt that has some skin. You could see her belly, you could see her cleavage. I'm not comfortable with skin in public anyway, whether it's her or anybody. And I knew that my mother would say something. And sure enough, she did. Kai went to go kiss her goodbye. And mom's like, "You're wearing that?" And Kai's like, "Yep." And just like kind of went on about her business. So the weekend goes on. We have a great time, but it's hot, it's summer. And that was pretty much how her wardrobe was. There was a lot of skin showing. And I try to be the cool aunt, but also like, what's the point of just creating turmoil just for the sake of creating turmoil? But I did want to understand. So on the way home, I say to her, "All right, Kai, like, I'm not comfortable with these kind of outfits on anybody, but can you explain to me like what this is about?" And her response was pretty much the foundation of the book. She knew something I did not know. And without her telling me, I probably would never know this perspective, right? So it's very important to listen, even when they're younger than us, or maybe less experienced, or whatever the thing is. Just always go into things with an open mind, would be my recommendation. So she says to me, "I'm Bobby. I should be able to dress like this and not get sexually assaulted." And I was like my whole mind was blown. So it wasn't about her, like, and I know I've been guilty of this. You look at a girl, she's dressed a certain way, and you're like, she's asking for trouble. Yep, she's asking for trouble. Like, it's just this automatic bullshit that for 40 something years, that's all I've known. Is, yep, she's looking for trouble, or, oh, like, she shouldn't be wearing that, or just all this judgment and all this stuff. And Kai's point wasn't about any of that. It's that she should be able to express herself and be safe in expressing herself. It's like, oh, so that's where the idea was born. So we've been working on this book together called My Teenage Mentor. So the way that we've been modeling this is we meet once a week. and we have a conversation about a topic. We have a list of like 30 topics that we want to write about. And we have a very candid conversation. Now, I will tell you, and I've not said this to her maybe as much as I should have leading up to this, but it's uncomfortable and it hurts my heart, some of the things she's saying. It also makes me very proud of her that she's got past some of this stuff, but to learn about some of the things that she's experienced, and she's telling me 100% transparently, and it's hard. It's hard to suck it up sometimes. I'm not even a parent and I want to protect her. Like, I just want to freaking protect her. I want to erase so many things that have happened to her. But I also, through recovery, through what I've learned, through her, through life experiences, I also know that it's her journey, and each thing will lead to happening the way it's supposed to. That's the way my belief system goes now. If you're a God person, maybe it's, like God doesn't give you more than you can handle, or, sometimes I listen to Joel Osteen. Thank you, Frank, for introducing me to that podcast because it's very good. But the messages just hit me sometimes. But Joel talks about often that like the worst comes, and the trick is to not give up hope and faith, that it's all happening for a reason, or that it'll work out the way it's supposed to. And that's kind of what I've adapted as my way of thinking with the universe. So as part of our discussion, we've talked about her ex, and her ex, she referred to as her trauma bond. It's no different than me being in love with who I've been in love with for the last 5 or 6 years. The boys that aren't good for us for many reasons. Maybe they are good for us for some reasons, but they're not really good for us. They're just not in alignment. Alignment, like I said, is one of my favorite words. So they're not in alignment with us. And we've done our recordings on relationships, or as she calls them, situationships, which I guess is like a trendy new thing, or maybe it's really old and I'm just old and haven't heard of it. But that's kind of like, I think it's beyond Netflix and chill. I think it's like you could be dating or talking, or you talk to other people. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of things going on that I don't really understand, or that are different from when I was 18. But anyway, some of the things I've learned about this ex from her is, everything from the gaslighting to the mental abuse and the verbal abuse and manipulation. And he's the one who got her smoking weed in the first place. Her 17th birthday, she comes home to his house, and his mom ODs and has to have Narcan and stuff. Like, this house is a drug infested freaking house in a drug infested neighborhood. Like, it's actually like 3 blocks away from where I want to, maybe a little more, but it's like in the neighborhood where I want to have 321, because there's such a population that would benefit from jobs and sobriety and all of that. But across the street from a methadone clinic, shootings, right? Like, I'm uncomfortable driving in that neighborhood. And through our conversations, and now that she's 100% honest with me, I learned these things. And I also learned back when she was in high school, she had kind of, there was this whole family war thing, and it had to do with where she was living. And I'm very confident now in hindsight with what she's told me that she did manipulate the situation a little. And so that she could stay with this guy in this apartment and do drugs and pretty much nothing else other than work to live in this place. And I didn't know how long she was helping, like, she's working to pay for rent and weed and food and survival and whatever. And she had options, but she kind of played us all. And I stood up for her back then. I was just like, she'll outgrow it. I could see the good in her. I could see the hope. I could have that faith, right? Like, that she would get through it. I was like, okay, well, I smoked weed in high school, or I made bad choices and I got through it. Here I am. I'm okay. I'm clean. I'm sober, and blah, blah, blah. So I've always looked at her that way. Like, she was beyond that kind of life and she'd have to experience it. So we go through our weekly meetings, and she pretty much tells me the same thing. She's the most self-aware person I know. And the fact that she's figured out how to be self-aware at 18 when it took me till my 40s is something I tell her all the time. I'm like, how do you even know this stuff to reflect upon it? But she's just so freaking bright and I don't know. So since she's moved out of there and she's moved to Florida and she's in a high school repeating her senior year because her mother moved her. Um, she left Connecticut before her driver's license. I let all of that go. I let all of it go. I'm just like, okay, let her get her diploma. She seems to be happy in Florida. So at Christmas, she came up from Florida and I got in from wherever I was, Ohio or Kentucky or wherever. So there was her, me, my mother, and my brother for Christmas. And it was the four of us. And it was actually probably one of the best Christmases in a while, as far as our version of Christmas goes. No drama, no fighting, no anything. However, while she was there, she went to go see this ex-boyfriend. And she didn't tell my mother about it. She told me just because I'm supposed to be her safe place and she could tell me everything and there'll be no consequences, so to speak. I actually have to revisit what the definition of safe space and repercussions looks like because of this most recent situation. And she basically told me it was for a booty call. Okay, cool. Go get the booty call. I get it. And I'm thinking she's safe. She's in Florida, right? She's in a school. She's sending us art pictures. She's writing a book. She's thriving. Well, the day before I start leaving for California, I get a text from her. Thanks for believing in me. Thanks for trusting me. Thanks for loving me. Thanks for being my safe space. I'm dropping out of school and I'm moving back with the guy. She didn't say dropping out of school. I'm just calling that out because it's a pain point. Like you only had 2 months left when you abandoned it in Connecticut. Now you only have a few months left and you're abandoning it again, like another 3 months. So this is what I want to talk about, the process, right? I had to just kind of give you the full story because this process has been ugly and uncomfortable for me. And I'm trying and I'm still not through it, but I am at a place where I think I could talk to you without breaking down and crying. So I've given her the trust. She's been honest to me. I've supported her. Now the past is the past, and we're using it for the sake of hopefully trying to help other parents and teenagers communicate with each other so that they don't feel as alone as she did during all that time. And maybe somebody could be saved, that's kind of our intention with the book. So what I didn't understand, like if I hadn't grown as close to her and I didn't know her and I didn't listen to her, I wouldn't know that she's mature and she knows better than to be with this guy. And by that, I mean, it's harmful. It's harmful. She declared it. It's harmful. She does the drugs, she'll smoke more weed. She'll just be in this bad situation physically in this apartment. Like, I don't think she's even seen my mother since she went back to Connecticut. Regardless, she's literally putting herself in danger, which is one thing when you don't know any better, right? Like, I could get past all of her choices before because she didn't know better, but she's declared knowing better. She's explained to me what she's learned. She's the one teaching me about a trauma bond. And I've given her all this trust and respect until now. And basically, when I first got the information, I lost my mind, quite honestly. I started crying immediately. I was still at my mom's and I didn't want to get her upset. It wasn't my news to tell her. So I was like, all right, let me process this. Let me digest it. Let me figure out how to handle this so that it doesn't blow up because this is our thing. We can communicate. We can get past anything. And I talked to my counselor and I talked to my friend and I talked to another coach and I thought and I processed and it took me a few days and we finally got to where we were jumping on Zoom to have a conversation about it. And my strategy was going to be to ask for her perspective, right? Like the blouse story. She explained to me why she shows so much skin to take her power back. So I'm like, there's gotta be a reason. And she would tell me the reason, right? That's how I went into the conversation. Well, I was not prepared. And when I asked her why, her answer was, it just feels right. It just feels right. Now, I believe in the universe and I believe in intuition and I believe in all these things. And I think part of what's always saved me is my logical part of me. I don't always think with my heart. Sometimes I do. A lot of times I do. But I also have this logic brain. So my logic brain cannot get past the fact she knows better and is going back. It's not like a teenager girl that doesn't know any better. She knows better. She's told me she knows better. And yet she's making this choice. So part of my pain point is I gave her all this trust and acknowledgement on the front side. And this is the point she doesn't understand. So what happened on this phone call and this, she said the why. And I was like, I need more than that. Like, why now? What has he done? Like, she doesn't have a job. She doesn't have money. She doesn't have a license. He has a job. He doesn't have money. I find out on the call that they're actually moving to another state, which is even more scarier because then my mother isn't right up the road or her father right up the road. So she basically couldn't provide answers. So the more silent she got, the more vocal I got, which is the part that I'm not so proud of. But I'm like, this makes me not trust you. This makes me like, you can't be in my circle. Like, I'm thinking through the recovery lens now. Like, you can't be one of my fucking people. Like, you're not in alignment with me. I can't get behind this. And I told her I can't support this decision. Um, and not just emotionally, because I know it's so dangerous. Like it would be hypocritical of me to treat her different in my lens. Like if you're not good for me or you're doing stuff, I just kind of take a step back. I'm not gonna be involved in all that. I don't need to know you're getting high constantly. I don't need to know that. Like, I mean, I do. I need to know that she's safe. Um, but I can't make that part of my life. And I thought I was doing the right things and I thought she would understand when I was trying to explain it to her. But instead, I think the way she took it, and we have yet to have a full conversation since, is more like I never trusted her all along, or how could I be your safe place, but still be upset about that. And that's what's interesting to me is I thought that I was in this open communication relationship. And I thought I knew like we could get past anything. And the way it's felt the last couple of weeks since all this happened was like we couldn't get past it. Like we're not going to be able to talk to each other. Like her and I talk all the time about how asinine it is that so many people in our lives don't talk to each other. I have two first cousins that used to live together that were practically sisters that won't talk to each other. Go figure, there was a guy involved. And then, my mother and her brother and brothers and, like all these things. And Kai and I talk about this all the time. Like, thank God that we're not like that. And it started to turn into like that. How can this be? Like, we're in alignment. I'm in recovery. I know my shit. Like, these are all the things going through my head. And I don't think she heard me. I don't think she heard what I was trying to say, which is it's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy in this example is because if she can't hear me, then that means she already is like checked out and she's already not who she's been all along with me, which then validates that I shouldn't trust her because she's back in this bad situation and she's not really going to listen. And I don't know that she's going to tell me the truth and blah, 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 like all this cycle. So just kind of a couple of the things that I'm learning from this is one, like really take the time. Like I took a couple days, but then I felt like in a rush to get it resolved. Of course, I was crying and emotional and it ruined like my whole trip, but I allowed it to. I take full responsibility for that, right? Like I just couldn't let it go. I couldn't get past it. I just wanted to talk to her, have her understand my point of view. And that didn't happen. She got really offended by our call. And I don't blame her. I rewatched it and I don't think I yelled as much as I would have liked. Like I really was like asking her, like, tell me, help me understand. And I still don't understand. So then I listened to a Joel Osteen podcast along the way, right? Um, and he talks about people who make those choices, people who go back into addiction. Like I feel like she's legit putting her life on the line. That's how I feel about this. This is not how I want it to play out, but this is what I'm afraid of. She moves to a state where it's just her and him. And he's not like, if the time they were apart, like he hit some milestones, like worked hard, saved up for a car, like showed some responsibility stuff, it'd be one thing. But none of that's happened. I can't tell that anything's different. But I'm afraid that they go to another state and they buy their weed, but they don't know their dealers or anybody in the state. And now they get fentanyl laced weed. Like, and I've talked about that, right? Like, it's dangerous. And I've talked about it with her. She knows. I don't know if she thinks like medical marijuana is going to save the world or whatever, but I don't even know that she makes her own doctors. I don't know any of those things. But anyway, so what I'm afraid of, I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid of her being in a strange place and, um, getting and just in trouble, the wrong stuff. I'm worried about escalating from weed to what comes next. Is it coke? Is it heroin? Is it pills? What is it? Because now in my mind, her judgment is impaired to make a choice like that and to go backwards in life when she's worked so hard to come out of it and to embrace the things that I try to show her that's possible, like the life beyond your wildest dreams stuff. Like I make sure that she's experiencing the best of things. Like when I took her to 10X, we got VIP so that she can have the full experience, the best access to the right people in the room to learn from that are successful, the best food, uh, you know, staying in decent hotels, not just regular like Motel 6. I try to give her these experiences and to show her and to let her make the choice. And I'm hurt because she didn't choose the way that I showed her. I thought she was gonna. So then I'm like, is this my ego? Like, what's going on? And I think in her head, she probably thinks she can have the best of both worlds. It doesn't work that way. Like I'm truly a believer of we are who we hang around and who we associate with. So I'm very scared about this. And the problem is we're not going to hear each other right now. It's too volatile. Maybe whatever amount of time, there'll be a time where we can talk about it and she'll hear me. And I'm hoping it's not after too much damage. But I was operating from a place of fear. And I was also still operating from like my old belief system, my go-tos, like, what are you doing? This is irresponsible. Like, you need a diploma, you need a license. You don't really need those things. And who am I to say? And I guess it comes down to, do I really still trust her, to make good decisions? And my sticking point is the fact that she's making a bad decision makes me not trust her for making good decisions. So back to some methods to try to handle this, because you're not going to run into maybe the same situation, but you are going to run against people that are not in alignment with your recovery or that are making choices that you're not comfortable with. And what Joel said in the podcast, when someone does do things like that, like when my mother said, like, you're going to wear that, like mom could have gave her a whole big lecture of like why she shouldn't wear that, right? Most of us can do that, is say our opinion and whatever. And I'm of the belief that you never change someone's mind by arguing. You just don't. I can't have my mind changed by arguing. Facts, conversation, perspective, open dialogue, answering questions, all of those things can change my mind, but not just yelling at me, or loudest voice wins is what I would call it in the Italian households that I'd been exposed to. But anyway, so Joel said, well, what about if you just love them through it? Love them through it. And the fear is my fear, right? And if I believe, like I tell you, that I believe in the universe and I believe that everything happens for a reason and it plays out the way it's supposed to, then I have to believe that this is gonna play out the way it's supposed to. Fucking sucks. Hurts my gut. Winds me up. Just even thinking about relinquishing it. But what if I just love her through it? What if that's what I do? I don't compromise my morals or my stuff. I don't know what these boundaries will look like, but they'll have to be boundaries. Um, I think one is as long as she's supporting him, I won't support her financially. Like, I'm not going to do that if I feel like by osmosis the money's going towards drugs. Like, that's just very to me. And finding out that that had happened in the past. Of course, like you don't see it that way. It's no different than when I gambled away the bill money. It wasn't the bill money until he paid the bill with it. So prior to that, it wasn't really bill money. So it was gambling money. Just the stories that we tell. And I may have to, like I'm gonna have to love her and figure it out and like figure out what's my shit and what's her shit. And it's gonna be freaking hard because it already is. It already is. But what I realized was harder was not having our relationship at all. Now, normally, before this happened, before this all played out, I would have said to you, like, cut him off. Don't, like, don't jeopardize your recovery. And I still believe that. But I'm gonna try this, like, love her anyway through it. And what that means is me just if I'm upset or I'm afraid or whatever, those are my feelings. And I'm gonna have to just process them the way I would any other emotion. I mean, I've thought about drinking and gambling the last couple of weeks as I've been on this adventure with her. Um, and it's like, no, I'm going to still show up and be the example I have to be. And that's part of where I'm struggling too, is I try to be an example. And an example to me is practicing what I preach. And I would preach that you do like the tough love and you don't enable. So I have to figure out what that looks like now because I'm not going to enable her. I won't enable her. It's not in my DNA. I will be rooting for her and I will love her. But it's gonna have to be different. So where we're at right now is this has been, I think, like I said, a week or two now. So now, yeah, we're going on 2 weeks since she did the message. We took the time. We had that very challenging conversation. I wrote her a letter, and that didn't go over well either, evidently. So where I'm at, so I've tried communicating out loud. I've tried communicating written. She told me she needed her space. I gave her space. And what do I want this to look like? Do I want this to be, because here's the deal. I want to protect my heart. That's where I'm at right now. I want to protect her and I want to protect my heart. She's one of very few that I let in the way I let in. That's part of why that guy is such a sticking point. I let him in and he took advantage of that. And he's kind of ruined it for her on some level. Well, now I let her in and now she's going to do stuff like this. Like this is the choice she's going to make. But again, that's all my stuff. So now instead of writing to her or talking to her about all my feelings, I'm telling you for starters. But I also started writing it. And this is going to have its place in the book, how we get past this. What I'm very clear on is I don't want it to be like all these other broken relationships in our family. I don't want to ever not talk to her or to be off. Like, we got to figure out how to process this. And this is going to be pretty powerful. And it's probably not going to play out the way like I would imagine to. And this is going to happen in you guys' lives too. Things aren't going to go the way that you want in your relationships. The real factor is how are you going to take care of you in this? Maybe you can protect the relationship, maybe you can't. Like some of this is going to be up to her. Like, and it's not ultimatum stuff. Like you can do this or not, or like you can do this, I won't talk to you. It's not like that. And I'm sure it probably came across that way in our first Zoom call together about it, but it's not what I meant at all. But there are going to be times we have to make tough choices. And what does that look like? Like if my heart's going to get broken by her and my heart breaking creates urges or triggers or whatever, then I can't put myself in that situation. So maybe we talk less, or maybe we don't talk about topics that are triggering to me and get me upset, that create panic and fear and worry. And I'm still learning how to identify those feelings, right? Like I'm not good at that still. I'm getting better. So in the last 2 weeks, I've done everything from write to her, write to myself, journal, meditate, listen to music, um, keep myself busy, like with work and to-dos. I've went I went to the zoo, right? And I went to the zoo with the intention of just like being zen and connecting. Um, I've listened to the podcast, the Joel Osteen podcast, like I mentioned. Now, those were just some of what's happened in the last 2 weeks. I'm sure I'm forgetting others. I've talked to people. I've also made the decision that I don't want to talk to people because I think that part of what screwed me up with the conversation was I had too much advice and I shouldn't have done that. Excuse me. I'm not tired of the topic. It's, I think, just being in this hotel room. Anyway, so I will do what I need to protect myself. One of the things that I'm wrestling with now is like the next steps. So here's the approach that I'm taking. We had a standing meeting on the calendar to meet once a week for the book. After I gave her time, and she's kind of written to me and expressed, that's how I know that she's more offended by our conversation than how I meant. And now that I've had some time to reflect, I realize that part of my reactions are because of being damaged by that guy or going through that experience. And like equating her behavior to that. And I'm really pretty passionate about weed being one of the variables. It freaking changes my relationships. It really does. I seen what it did to her during high school. I seen what it did to him. Like that's probably the biggest reason I don't talk to him anymore is because he went from gummies from a bad back to like stoned is the natural way of life. And I just can't. That's why I'm so curious about weed, because I watch these people and how they're impacted. And they don't think they're being impacted. That's the freaking illusion of addiction, right? You don't think anything's changing. You can't usually see it when you're in it. And maybe, oh, I just had an aha moment, guys. That's probably a big part of why I can't identify my emotions, because I wasn't ever processing my emotions. I was gambling or drinking them away. And I think that that's what the weed does. That's what doesn't make sense either, because Kaya said to me like, oh no, I know I need to process my emotions, so I won't smoke until after she does whatever she does to process. So at any rate, so now what does it look like going forward? So I asked her today, and before I even reached out to her, I had this mental conversation with myself. I did a couple self-care things. I went and tanned, and I was like, I'm going to reach out to her, but I can't let what her response is make me feel any kind of way, right? Like I had to take control of that. So I was like, okay, if she agrees to what I'm about to say, great. If she doesn't, that's fine. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. So I messaged her and said, hey, like we have this time on the calendar. I can probably meet you today and I can meet you next Friday because of the way my work schedule goes. After that, I'm going to be around too many people and it's going to blow up. And I know all that. So at least it's not 2 weeks from now if she decides she wants to talk to me and I don't have the ability. I put out, okay, do you want to meet? She wrote back. She had plans today, but we can plan on next week. So then we're just going to take it from there. Hopefully by then, the emotions, the heightened emotions, the sensitivity, the taking it personally, the fear, the exaggerated emotions will hopefully be calm. I don't know what it's going to look like next week. I just know that I am going to take the advice of Joel and I'm just going to love her through it. Like I'm going to love her through it. And I'm going to be here when she gets to the other side of it. I don't have to be there for every step of the way while she's going through it. And I did say that too. Like, what are you're going to like abandon all of us and then you're going to expect us to be there to pick up the pieces. Now, if you're an adult and a parent or you're anybody who's went through any of this stuff, we all know that's what's going to happen, right? Like if she makes it to the other side, that's what's going to be. The story never changes. He's not going to get more responsible. He's not going to take care of her. They're not going to quit weed together. They're like all those stories just don't. I don't know very many people that have ever had that story on it. I don't think I know anybody that has that story. Um, it could be out there. God, I hope it's out there. That's really scary. But I've never heard a happy ending from that perspective. Um, More often than not, I see people in recovery, like one of the people get in recovery, uh, and they're changing and growing. So usually they don't align with their partner after. I've never seen anybody like quit together and go through recovery together. I do know some couples that are in recovery, both, but I don't think I know any that started together and went to recovery together. They met in recovery. They were more aligned, right? Like back to that alignment thing. Um, all that to say, I'm pretty confident that this story is not going to have an happy ending, like as far as changing or whatever. I have to have faith that everything I've shown her, the better way of life, that we deserve more, that we're worth more, we're worth yachts and private jets and of course I'm exaggerating right now, but we deserve more and we're capable of having whatever we want. I have to just hope that that sticks with her and that's made enough of an impression that after so much time or so much bullshit, she's just going to realize it and get out again. But if she doesn't, that's another whole story. But I got to have faith and I like that perspective again. Like this isn't like I don't go to Joel's church or anything. Well, even if I did, that wouldn't matter. I have gone to some that like are part of his whatever. Anyway, this is not to preach about like Joel knows everything or whatever, but I will say that these principles, I guess, would be a coping mechanism for me. So that principle and that having faith and expecting it to be better on the other side or that it's happening for a reason, that I will buy into. And that's going to be my coping mechanism for now. And hopefully when we connect, we can have a conversation like at this tone of voice and not the and for her, she shuts down. I get more blah and she gets more like so I have to be very mindful of what the voices in my head are saying. And are they true? And are they just based on BS? What does that look like? So, yeah, so those are some of my coping mechanisms, some of my blind spots. Uh, Relationships are tough. It's tough. But I will say that when you do start making the choices, like if you want to live a bet-free life, a sober life, whatever the life is, without the addiction dictating your life, you start to attract the kind of people that want the same kinds of things or that get you. Again, not every day is perfect, but as long as you have an open mind and open heart, you can navigate everything. And just know you can't control anybody else. I can't control her. I can't control him. I can't control any of those things. And accepting that's pretty hard. But again, as people in recovery get to use the serenity prayer and keep ourselves in line. So I hope that helps. I hope that if you're going through something with a challenging relationship, that you find your tools that work for you, whether it's writing or journaling or talking to them or having time or listening to music or going for a walk or whatever the things are. I hope that you have things. And if you don't know what your go-to things are, play. Like go try some new things that you've never tried before. Maybe it is take a walk. Maybe it is go see some animals. Animals make you happy, like, or they make me happy. Not snakes so much. But find things, go explore to see what brings you joy or what brings you quiet so that you can process and digest. And maybe it's, doing a spin class to burn off anger and frustration. Or maybe it's going kayaking to get some chill on the water and get back calm, whatever that is. But just try and have fun and know that all the challenges really do have a cool side. Like the other side is usually very informative to what we've learned along the way. Maybe not obvious every time, every second, but and then let's say you don't have any of this going on right now. No chaos. Every relationship's perfect. Your job's going well. Your relationships are going well. Life's going well. Acknowledge it, guys. Be grateful. Take notice. Like now that I'm through some of the calm of it, even though that's there, and even though the job's ramping up to be super stressful, it's just like, oh, I can handle this. Oh, I'm going to learn from this. Oh, I'm grateful that I even have a chance, right? Because I'm living to live. I'm not living to just go through the motions and not experience stuff. So I am going to experience pain and rougher days and speed bumps so that I can appreciate the good ones. So if you're not going through anything, just appreciate the good ones. Well, that's what I got for you today, beautiful people. Thanks for tuning in, and I will talk to you next time.